Welcome back. Honorable Sanni Zorro, a former member of the Nigerian House of Representatives and publisher of Nigeria Now magazine, is still with us in our Abuja studios. Thank you for staying with us, Honorable. Before we went on a break, you were talking about something. You can go on, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. As I was saying, there is a regional framework to contain the various security challenges within the West African sub-region. And Nigeria is not only a signatory to this cocktail of efforts, but it is a frontline country because Nigeria is leaking, from all sort of sources. Nigeria is surrounded by French-speaking countries, and it appears that French-speaking countries in the West African sub-region have been most hit by this web of violence, generalized violence, that has taken so many forms, from maritime piracy to human trafficking, proliferation of light arms and weapons, importation of drugs, and so on and so forth. But Nigeria seems to be the only country so far among the English-speaking countries that has been racked, with this issue of banditry and so on. And that is after, peace had returned to Sierra Leone as well as Liberia, which had their own type of violence, especially in the last 2 decades. Now, the point is, there must be concerted efforts at various levels, including the level that we have just seen, where 3 governors from Nigeria engaged with their counterpart in Niger Republic on the orders of the President of Niger Republic and with the concurrence, apparently, of the Nigerian president. Now, these 3 governors that are the chief executives of their states, as earlier indicated by you, they are the chief security officers of their states, in the sense that at least they have information sources from the police, from the Directorate of State Security Service, and so many other sources about the movements, about the activities of criminals, and therefore they have first-hand information about transnational as well as cross-border criminality. So when they engage with their own counterparts, like the Prefect of Niger Republic confessed, they had confiscated a lot of weapons in the past that were destined to Nigeria. And these weapons were coming from distant countries such as Burkina Faso and Mali, where the circulation of weapons traced to the collapse of the Gaddafi administration in Libya have accumulated, and they have become a major source of weaponry for bandits, insurgents, militants, and all sorts of violent groups that are now having a free reign within this area in the West African sub-region. So these 3 governors, I believe, these efforts, if they intensify them, will help in curbing especially the proliferation of these weapons and reduce to a very large extent the nature of crimes, the rates of these crimes. Now, I tried to explain also that there is a massive forest that crisscrosses these states. They call it Kuyambana Forest in Kaduna State, but it is the same forest that is referred to as, Rugu Forest in Katsina State, and then it also traverses through Zamfara State into Niger Republic and up until it got into Mali. Now, these forests, they have hills. These are forests that cannot be navigated by vehicles, and that is where the bandits have a field day using motorcycles. You see, in the nature of their operations, they mostly use motorcycles. Even in the smuggling of bags of rice from Niger Republic, you discover that motorcycles are mostly used. And once they disappear into the forests, these forests are largely ungoverned spaces. They are unable to be detected, either by technology, which we don't have, I think, in this country, or Niger Republic, we do not possess, the adequate and sophisticated technology to track their movements. Although Niger Republic hosts the African Regional Command, for a drones base of the United States of America, but it appears Niger Republic is unable also to track the movement of several groups that are illegally, disturbing the peace as well as security of that state. Now, apart from the Northwest, like you also said, there was a meeting earlier on of northern governors hosted by Katsina State. Why? Because the northern states, the 19 of them, are racked in various crises. The northeastern region, its case is an open book. In the last 10 years, Boko Haram had kept unleashing violence at certain rates that are never expected, especially within the Bay states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe. Now, this is what has partly spilled over. Yes, please.
Yes, you up on the issue of a strategy. When you refer to the meeting by the governors of the northern states, the papers reported recently that in Zamfara, Katsina, and Sokoto states, the governors decided to declare amnesty for bandits. And then subsequently, I think around August 30, the governor of Katsina State was reported in the papers as having held a meeting with the bandits and seeking their cooperation and all of that. Do you think that this policy of appeasement is a good strategy? First, the amnesty. Second, meeting with the bandits. Or could it be that the governor of Katsina State was misrepresented? Because I thought if the state government knows who the bandits are and where their camp is, wouldn't the best strategy have been to, clamp down on them to check their impunity?
And if I may add to that, Dr. Abati, also releasing arrested bandits in exchange for kidnapped victims.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a very interesting question. Last night, there was a press statement from the Katsina government house to the effect that the bandits had released about 11 or 12, kidnapped, victims from Katsina State. And they were freed, to the, I think, to the governor, also officials of the government house. Now, in exchange, some bandits that have not been tried and convicted had also been freed. This has been going on for quite some time in Katsina and Zamfara states. I think it's a very good strategy. Not only that it is good, it is in the context of the framework of the ECOWAS 1999 Protocol on Security that I have talked about. Now, in the case of ECOWAS, the article under reference talks about mitigation, peace building, preventive diplomacy, as well as other measures, numerous other measures, to contain the situation. It is not only by law enforcement that you can achieve peace. You remember very well the agenda of Africa's first UN Secretary General, the late Boutros Ghali, who said, without peace, there cannot be development. And then when he was succeeded by the late Kofi Annan said, both peace and development are not achievable without democracy and human rights. Now, these two agendas have continued to guide many African leaders. Without peace, there cannot be development. Nigeria has continued to insist on using force of arms to subdue these acts of impunity by rebel groups and so on. But this is not the first time that either the three governors or the Nigerian state will be experimenting with the strategy of, peacemaking, like the prisoner exchanges and the appeasement policy you have talked about. In the case of the Niger Delta, which was another type of violence, you remember very well how President Erdogan created a whole ministry to tackle the issues that arose from the Niger Delta issues. We came up with so many palliatives, including the amnesty that has, continued up to today, the NDDC, as well as so many other packages, local content within the, petroleum industry, and so on and so forth. So it is not too much, and I think it is not actually a sign of weaknesses. No, because all conflicts will naturally end up at the negotiating table. Now, these bandits, interestingly, especially in Katsina, that have continued, to surrender and express readiness, genuine readiness for that matter, to make peace. They also have grievances, not against the Nigerian state, but against local traditional rulers and law enforcement agencies who continued to rustle their cattle. While Fulanis, for instance, are being accused of cattle rustling, but the kind of injustice being obtained at local levels are quite amazing. Those of us who have grown in those parts, rural parts, distant and remote parts of northern Nigeria, will tell you how local courts in the northern parts of the country, count on the ignorance of Fulanis actually to seize their cattle. Either when they bring cases for divorce or at very, very, slight provocations. It is their cattle that will be sold off, to give bribes to all these, local officials. And the quarrel, actually, what ignited this problem, the whole crisis in the northern parts of the country, most especially, has been a persistent, long-drawn animosity between these nomadic Fulanis and their Hausa communities.
Honorable Sanni, thank you so much for these perspectives, but we've run out of time, unfortunately. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Honorable.